Everything that you heard about individualism versus collectivism was a lie. The real choice isn't me versus we. It's not binary, but it's not exactly both either. Let me explain. I believe what we actually want is a high level of individualism and autonomy with a high level of a specific type of collectivism, which I will go over. In this video, I will go over the collectivism in Japan, individualism of America and India, the false dichotomy between these two things, the hidden distinction of collectivism that people don't talk about, what's the solution, and parting thoughts. If we're talking about Japan, then we got to talk about some anime. My favorite example of collectivism in anime is from My Hero Academia Season 1, Episode 2. This scene makes me tear up almost every time. Let me set the scene. The greatest hero in the world, All Might, has been told that because of his injury, he has somewhat of a cooldown on how often he can transform to his muscular self. If he continues to overexert his powers, he will eventually lose them forever. Deku, the main character, currently a child, comes across his bully, Bakugo, who is being held captive by this slime villain, and Deku stands on the sideline helplessly because he knows that as a little boy, he has zero chance of prevailing against this villain. And nearby, All Might, who just got off his cooldown from a recent rescue, also watches helplessly as he can't overexert his power lest he lose it forever. Then it happens. Bakugo makes eye contact with Deku, and then with no explanation, Deku finds himself jumping into the fray, attempting to save his bully against a villain that he can never hope to win. When asked why, he simply says, "You look like you are looking for help." And this statement inspires All Might to use his power because even if he's going to lose it, when, if not right now, will his power be useful for helping anyone? With Deku's actions lighting a flame inside All Might, he goes to save both of them and recognizes that it is not power, but heart that determines a hero. And that's what collectivism is all about, valuing the needs of others as much, if not more, than your own. Also, All Might's powers, which he will give to Deku, is literally called One for All. It genuinely does not get more collectivist than that. I feel like there's already a lot of documentation of how high trust Japan is, but I also wanted to share my own personal anecdote, my experiences in Japan as well. While traveling, my two bros realized that the specific ticket that we actually need to go to a different station to buy it. So they went to go buy the tickets for all three of us, and I basically had to watch all the luggage. This was in the middle of a public train station, so a lot of people were just walking by, and it was getting a little cold, so I decided to leave the bags out, and I decided to come inside where I can still see them, like through the glass window, so I could just keep an eye on them, and I lined them up real neat against the wall. And then suddenly, these two girls with their luggage sees that I have lined up the luggage. They don't see me though. They just see the luggage just randomly on the road. And I mean, for me, since I'm American, obviously I have, suspicions of maybe my bag getting stolen or something like that. So I'm like a sniper eagle eye just outside in the glass window, just like making sure looking down. But these girls just leave their bags next to ours. They just leave. Like zero supervision. They just completely leave their bag next to our luggage. And shortly after that, another group of three dudes come and they just leave all of their luggage on the other side of our luggage as well. And then they just leave. And mind you, they were gone for like 30 minutes because that's how long it took for my friends to go get the tickets. And nobody was watching it. So besides me, who's watching our bags, and I guess these other girls' bags and also these random dude groups' bags, no one else is watching a lined up luggage of like 13 different luggages in a row. Like, what is happening? And for me, I feel like this experience left me so pleasantly surprised because I feel like this bizarre situation can only happen in a very general high trust society. I feel like this showed me that even if a society is economically struggling, as the Japanese yen has depreciated roughly 8% compared to the US dollar in the last year, it's not necessarily about the struggles, but it's more about the culture. It's more about what is praised, what is valued, what is normalized. Of course, this is not to say that collectivism is the best and there's just no downsides to it. Actually, there are four downsides to collectivism that I will go over. One, it can lead to conformity. You can be afraid to speak out because you want to blend in and you're afraid of the possible consequences. Two, you can suppress other unique voices in the name of maintaining harmony. Three, a lot of people can be ridden with guilt because they feel like they are not fulfilling their duties and obligations. And four, there's another thing about collectivism, but this one deserves an entire section of its own, so to avoid going on a tangent, I will cover it in a later section. Now that we've talked a little bit about collectivism, let's move on to individualism. Recently, I came across a video called "Why is India Like That?" And it basically talked about the problems in India and how it's rooted in these two different concepts of individuality that has been distorted over time. The first of the two concepts is called Jugad. And it's basically just an idea of creative problem solving. Even if maybe a problem can be solved in one way, maybe we can save time and money by doing it in a different way that's more inventive, like potentially attaching a water pump to a stationary bicycle. That way, you don't have to pay for electricity. Or modifying and repurposing top loading washers to be able to churn multiple ingredients at once. That way, you can have a huge batch of lassi or yogurt or something like that. Jugad, as an initial concept, is basically just resourcefulness. However, somewhere along the way, using this creativity to benefit oneself has turned into using creativity to benefit oneself at the expense of others. So, this would be like using your creativity and your cunning to take advantage of somebody else, or skip traffic signals, or skip lines that other people were waiting for. And all of these things have been glorified as jugad. The video also brings up a historical example where basically there was a Cobra epidemic, which means that the government decided to offer money for Cobra heads to potentially keep the population down. But then this actually led to a lot of Cobra farms being created where people purposely bred Cobras and then raised them and then killed them just so they can profit off of trading them in for money. And the story is that so many people tried to game the system by breeding so many Cobras, and then eventually the government could not keep up with the payments, so then they dialed it back, which led to all of these Cobras being released in the wild. And it actually made the Cobra population worse and it actually made the problem worse. That's what the video claimed, but upon an unreasonable amount of research, I have not actually found a single instance or report of prosecution or discovery of these Cobra breeding or Cobra farms. So I don't actually know if there's any contemporary documentation of these Cobra population actually becoming worse or these farms actually existing. But there have been documentation of this program actually happening and them dialing it back because they couldn't keep up with the payments. But the actual problem worsening or these Cobra farms, these actually have not been substantiated. Just wanted to make sure you're properly informed on that. But yeah, that's the idea of Jugad, which is basically just using creative problem solving to benefit oneself and their family, while some people misuse this creativity to benefit themselves at the expense of other people. And the second Indian concept is called Izzat, which basically is honor and pride. It's what other people think of you, what people say about you. But the seemingly benign concept can also be twisted into you can't make me do this because I am my own person, and it leads to actions that are actually going against the common good. So while positive forms of Izzat can lead to things like being true to your word, keeping your promises, or having pride in your work, negative forms of Izzat can lead to things like littering because it's like, oh, like you can't control me. I'm allowed to do whatever I want, as well as public defecation and refusing to do maintenance work of public spaces. But I feel like this type of distorted individualism is not isolated to India. I feel like this can be seen very much in America as well. I feel like a lot of people watching definitely have examples themselves of rampant individualism where people start to only think of themselves and they take advantage of somebody else. They skip traffic signals, skip lines, they litter on the street because it's not their problem. Because of this prevalent culture of, I need to make sure that I'm good and I'm what matters the most. So I feel like while the video is talking about why is India like that, I feel like I would also ask, why is America like that? You know? Also, I feel like another somewhat hidden, insidious downside of individualism is the idea of growth. Individualism focuses on you and how you are free to do whatever you want. But I feel like modern culture distorts this into you are responsible for growing and becoming impressive. It's like your entire identity becomes work. Your career is a project, your body is a project, your relationship is a project, your hobbies are projects, the social media that you have is a project. It feels like individualism freed us from being shoehorned into one person, but actually, it also gave us infinite pressure to construct ourselves to become every person. Like a venture capitalist investors looking at company metrics, we are pushed into growth after growth after growth. But we're not a company. That's the whole point of individualism, is that you don't need to do that. I don't know who needs to hear this, but we're all gonna die. 99.9% of us will not matter in 100 years. So if you truly don't want to grow, who cares? In fact, even if you do grow, who cares? I think it's important to take a step back and think, do I even want to do this? Because once we let go of this pressure from ourselves and others, after some time, we can actually hear the voice that's inside of us, which has been muzzled for far too long, that can guide us where we actually want to go individualistically. Now, I'm not saying that you should be lazy maxing, I mean, unless you want to, but what I'm saying is that sometimes it's good to take the foot off the gas, to think about where your car is going, and if you actually want to go there, because at the end of the day, the car is going to break down and it actually doesn't really matter. So you should really just think about whether you want to go to the place that you're going. That's the beauty of individualism, is that you're driving the car. Anyways, okay, so now that we've talked about collectivism and individualism, let's talk about this dichotomy because I feel like people often ask themselves which one produces a healthier society, right? Individualism, where people focus on themselves, or collectivism, where people focus on others. But I think the real question is actually, is this even the right axis? There's a 2012 study called Examining the Dimensionality of Self-Construals and Individualistic Collectivistic Values with Random Intercept Item Factor Analysis, which is more mouthful than an isekai anime with how wordy that is. But it determined that it actually isn't one at the expense of the other. You can actually be high in both. So while people often see this similar to introversion and extroversion, where it's just this one dimensional line, where the closer you get to one, the farther away you're getting from the other, there's actually two dimensions to this. A person can have a high sense of independence and autonomy and have a strong interest towards the public and harmony. For example, between this very common American individualism versus Japanese collectivism debate, Latin America actually does not fit cleanly into either. The culture is known to have a very strong sense of autonomy and individualism, while also having a very strong sense of collectivism. So Latin America is actually maxing both. However, there's also a lot of data that actually shows that Latin America actually has a higher crime rate than America or Japan. For example, the homicide rates per 100,000 people of Latin America is roughly 17, while America hovers around 6 and Japan hovers around zero point 0.3, which is kind of insane, to be honest. So, what does this mean? Does this mean that a society that actually maximizes both individualism and collectivism actually is going to be more unsafe and worse than if we were to try to focus on one or the other? No, because there's actually another factor. Remember when I said I wanted to dedicate an entire section to the fourth downside of collectivism? Well, here it is. The thing is, collectivism itself isn't actually a monolith. There's actually two different types of collectivism. There actually isn't a lot of vocabulary to describe these distinctions, so I will call these in group collectivism versus out group collectivism. So, the one thing that I failed to mention about Latin America is that while they do have a strong investment in their family and friends, very strong values, studies have also shown that they have extremely low trust of the general public. The thing about having high levels of in group collectivism is that it can potentially lead to negative outcomes that we all know very well: corruption, favoritism, so only picking the people that you like, nepotism, only hiring your families, clientelism, switching political and bureaucratic favors in exchange in personal relationships. So, a recent example of this could be something like the Bricks and Minifig scandal, where the American Fork Police Department, they were part of the Mormon community, so then they heavily and unjustly favored one side because that person was in their in group of Mormons. Allegedly, please don't sue me, but it's very easy to see how one can lead to the other. If you are supremely valuing your friends and your family, then there can be times where you put them at the expense of the general public or what might be good for everyone. So here is the ultra hot take. Are you ready? While most people don't think this way, I think that if we want to live in a better society, we want to actually maximize out-group interest and minimize in-group interest, which is also known as tribalism, as much as is reasonable. So, how you treat people you are not close to, strangers, is actually more important than how you treat people that are close to you. While that might sound insane, you might be saying, you're telling us to focus on treating random strangers on the street better than how we treat our friends and family? But we can actually see some of this peeking through the parts of the Overton window. Number one, when you go on a date with somebody, how that person treats the restaurant staff is actually far more important and far more indicative than how they treat you, because they have a vested interest in getting into your good graces. So, of course, they will try because you are in their in group at the moment. But when they are rude and disrespectful towards the staff, it shows how they will treat you when they are mad at you and they're not vested and they don't need to be nice to you anymore when you are in their out group. And this is why it feels so much more substantial, meaningful when a person goes out of their way to save a stranger in trouble, because it demonstrates high out group collectivism instead of high in group collectivism. Number two, I'm not religious, but this is exactly why Jesus is such a Chad, because he was not just kind to his fellow apostles, his family, his in group. He was kind to people that he just met. A person who just got caught in adultery, who he never met before, and he came in and protected her from getting stoned. That woman is the farthest from his in group, but he had huge out-group interest. He was kind to everyone, not just the ones that he was close to, the people that he was invested in. And number three, mathematically, if you think about it, The number of people that you don't know far surpasses the number of people that you do. So, on a random walk outside, you and everyone else will encounter far more strangers than people you know. So, how everyone, you and others, treat strangers or people that they're not close to, the outgroup, is actually far more prevalent in everyday life than how you treat your in group or your family/friends when it comes to living in a society that we want to live in. I ask, would you rather live in a society where everyone only takes care of their friends and family, or one where strangers take care of strangers? I hope I've sufficiently explained my hot take of how I think that outgroup collectivism actually is more important than in group collectivism. And I'd like to end with a quote. I have no idea where I heard this. I don't know if it's from a friend or a movie, but it goes like this: being kind to people that you like is the easiest thing in the world. What matters is being kind to people that you don't like. That's the hard part. That's what makes you kind. Okay, so I want to maximize individualism, autonomy, and also maximize outgroup collectivism and also minimize in group collectivism. So, what does this look like? There's a military story that I like. So, one day there was a squad that was running around during training, and there was a pole that fell over and was covering part of the dirt road. And while jogging, roughly half of the squad just hopped over the pole while they were running. But one person took a couple minutes to pick up the pole and set it back and fix it to where it's supposed to be. Then the general looked at this and looked at the squad and said, "Look, he took a couple of minutes to fix it for himself, and now no one, including him, will need to jump over this over and over while we're running through on our training." Showing that he could have jumped over it just like everyone else, but because he took a couple more minutes to fix it the way it's supposed to be, now everyone in his squad, as well as all the other squads in the military camp, will never have to hop over this pole ever again, improving the system for not only himself, but everyone else who comes after. This concept is also illustrated beautifully in Expedition 33. I won't go too into this, but basically, there are these explorers traveling to dangerous lands to make headway, and while they pave the path, there is a iconic quote: "Learn from the ones who came before and lay the trail for the ones who come after." And I think this applies to all of us. How small efforts on our part can pave the way to benefit not only us, not only our friends and family, but people outside of that and those who come after. Also, in my favorite movie of all time, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Waymond in the very beginning is contrasted with Alpha Waymond, who is basically more dominating, gets things done. He's like the classic alpha masculine guy, while the normal Waymond is kind of contrasted as kind of like a buffoon, where he's like putting googly eyes on random objects. He's playing around with random people when he needs to get things done. And he just kind of comes off as a harmless goofball who can't really do anything to both the audience, us, and also Evelyn, the protagonist. So naturally, the protagonist, Evelyn, prefers Alpha Waymond. But just like in the dating example, he only favored Evelyn when she was in his in group. The moment he realized that she is not the Evelyn that he was interested in, the one he was looking for, he left her to die immediately. Meanwhile, the normal Waymond is left with this huge chaos where everyone is fighting everyone, and he says one of my favorite quotes: "I know all of you are fighting because you are scared and confused. I'm confused too. All day, I don't know what the heck is going on. But somehow this feels like it's all my fault. I don't know. The only thing I do know is that we have to be kind. Please Be kind, especially when we don't know what's going on. And he's saying this to the people who are literally trying to kill him. That's that's as outgroup as it gets. And then he says to Evelyn, the protagonist, when I choose to see the good side of things, I'm not being naive. It is strategic and necessary. It's how I've learned to survive through everything. I know you see yourself as a fighter. Well, I see myself as one too. This is how I fight. And this inspires Evelyn to fight in a different way, realizing that she was actually mistaken when she was thinking that Alpha Waymond was better, because it was actually the normal Waymond's outgroup interested mindset that actually led to the world that was worth living in. So now I want to get a little personal. I actually used to live out of my car because of poverty. And one day I locked myself out of the Prius that I was sleeping in at 1 a.m. The engine was running, I had less than a gallon of gas, and I knew that if the car kept going overnight, it would most likely destroy the engine and potentially just destroy the car that was literally my entire house at the time. And since I locked myself out while I was half asleep, I had absolutely nothing. I had no phone, no wallet, no keys, nothing. Desperate for help, I went to In N Out. That's where I was working at the time. And David, who was my coworker, so less than a friend, ended his shift early and came out, stood by me for over an hour on the phone, coordinating with AAA to get someone out there to open my car once again at like 1 a.m. at night. We weren't close friends. I doubt that I was in his in group, but his actions affected me so deeply that day that I still remember it vividly 8 years later. He genuinely saved my car, and I don't even want to imagine what would have happened if my literal living space, house slash car, was rendered useless because of this slight slip up I had when I was half asleep, just going outside to grab something really quick. Now, while I might not be a real life hero like David, I also have a small example as well. While I was doing laundry at my condo, I saw that these baskets were stacked where it made it difficult for you to pull out just the one that you needed. So I went ahead and straightened it out, somewhat for me, but I also took extra time to sort out every other basket for those who come after. Now, I don't know these people. I'll never see them, but I know that this tiny gesture that took a couple minutes helped them as much as I went ahead and helped myself, creating a slightly more efficient system for not just me, but also all the people in the outgroup. So while I don't think you need to be a self-sacrificing hero like Deku or All Might, or a fantastical explorer like in Expedition 33, I do think that evolving your mindset from how can I be better off to how can my friends and my family be better off to finally how can the strangers around me and I be better off can create a world where we have high individualistic autonomy while also having high trust among strangers. While sometimes the incentive of the whole and the individual can oppose each other, I feel like there are also a lot of times where they might not oppose each other that much. Like the laundry basket thing, it's just a small gesture, but also it can help everyone else too. Of course, another aspect of this is that a lot of autonomy and outgroup collectivism that you have also just depends a lot on your environment. So, the more you put yourself out there and speak your mind, the more comfortable you will become having your own opinions. And the more you meet strangers and help them, the more comfortable you will become to do so. Conversely, the more you isolate yourself and conform in fear of negative consequences, the lower your outgroup collectivism and your individualism will become. I guess in conclusion, just like how Deku's actions inspired All Might, Wayman's actions inspired Evelyn, and how David's actions towards me, a practical stranger, inspired me, your actions can inspire a flame inside others and those that come after making the world a little bit brighter each time. And with that, hopefully, we can create a world with high autonomy and individualism where we can freely speak our minds without fear, with high trust among strangers, with high outgroup collectivism. A world where we can leave our luggage in the middle of the train station and 10 random strangers just follow, but one where we can also stand on our own with our own opinions and paths not being swallowed by the whole collective. So it's not individualism versus collectivism. You can do both. You can stand up, speak your mind, pave your own path, and focus on being kind to the outgroup. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to leave a like and comment if you did, and subscribe for more videos from me, and support me on Patreon because your boy has no money. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.